Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host for tonight's broadcast, Insanely R13. We're going to be here for a relatively short and small race for tonight's X-League Porsche Cup here at Spa-Francorchamps. This will be a 22-lap race, technically 23 because of the pace lap, but it will be a 22-lap race. We're looking at only having 6 drivers partaking in tonight's event. Although XR Monaco did go ahead and do qualifying as if he was going to race, he has elected to pursue pace car duties today, as has Wiza for tonight's event here. On pole is Manuel Pedro. Most of his laps, he was really struggling during qualifying, but he put it together on the very last lap. And banged out a lap, though, was over half a second faster than our second fastest qualifier, who was Indy L Violet. So Violet will be starting on the outside of the front row. In the middle row will be Tempered Ship and Homeminder 241. Homeminder in that number 91 Oreo machine. Then behind them will be the drivers who missed or skipped qualifying, Savage 6647 and Keplex 500 milligrams. They are the drivers who will be leading up the back of the field. With this being the longest track on the schedule, while also having such a radically short and small field that already has some pretty large gaps in qualifying, I'm honestly expecting this is going to be a very calm race with not really a lot to talk about. The biggest question really is just going to be who's going to have the best tire strategy, and does Violet have anything to try and nip Manuel Pedro when it comes to tire strategy throughout the run tonight. But again, this only being a 23-lap event, I would not be surprised if this is a very, very simple two-stop affair. Just go soft, 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 run about 8 laps on the soft tires, another 8 laps on the soft tires, and 7 laps on the soft tires. Weather conditions are thunderclouds. What that means is that there's not really any sun, and you will occasionally hear a rumble of thunder in the distance, but the track is dry. There is not going to be any issue of rain in tonight's event, so the circuit will be nice and dry throughout the run tonight. So our relatively small field is running down the end of, well, the back half of Sector 2 and coming up to Sector 3 momentarily here. A lot of big names, such as Maze or Breezy Rain, MIA for tonight's event, so while there only recently has started being points properly tallied for the Porsche Cup Championship, over half the races this season thus far have not even counted to that. So the Porsche Cup Championship right now is very eclectic looking, to say the least, right now. So we're not really focusing too much on that. This is really going to be an event where we're just looking at who can beat who on circuit. Once again, we do want to say thanks to Wiza and Monaco for doing pace car duties, although I do feel with how small the field is, it would have been more appreciated if they performed racing instead of just pace car duties for tonight's event. With a high-speed left-hander, and we'll see the pace car peel off just as they get through the final chicane. They'll double up, and won't have a lot of time to double up. But again, with only 6 cars, shouldn't be too much of an issue. So, Manuel Pedro looking for his first win in X-League. Indy L Violet looking for what would be his 3rd win in the X-League Porsche Cup. No one else in this field has won a race this season in Pro GT3 or Porsche Cup. As they come to the green flag, green is out, and we are underway here at Spa-Francorchamps. Pedro has that outside line. Violet has the inside. There's a little bit of contact between the two of them. And it looks like Pedro now has the inside. Violet's now going to be on the left-hand side, Pedro on the right-hand. They are in a dead heat drag race. Someone's going to have to back out by the time they get into Al Rouge, and it will be Violet who backs out. So Pedro goes to the top and has a big slide. Pedro sliding out of control at the top of the mountain, but somehow keeps the car together. But now Violet and Savage have a draft on him. Pedro holds the right-hand side. Violet's going to try and come up on the outside, and that is Savage looking to make it 3 wide. Violet goes deep, plenty deep, and they're going to be 3 wide for a second, but it is Violet who goes nice and deep, and Violet goes into the lead at the end of the Camel Straight. And Pedro, your pole sitter, slips back to second now. And now Sector 2, very technical, very corner focused here. So the draft's not going to be very strong, but Pedro can stay right behind Violet through these corners. When they get to Sector 3, he may have a shot at a draft overtake. Savage has worked his way up into the 3rd position, but already starting to lose ground to our top 2. Violet leads, Pedro 2nd, Savage in 3rd. And already that gap is rapidly opening from the front to the rear of the grid. Farther back is Tempered Chip and Keflex, 500 MG. And Keflex in that golden orange car, trying to make it stick around the outside. Trying to close down on Tempered Chip. It's still side by side, and now he completes that overtake. So move Keflex up into the 4th spot now. Pedro in that number 8 Rolex Porsche still runs right behind NDL Violet. Again, last week, Pedro came so close to a victory at Road Atlanta, only about a 1/10 of a second shy at the end of it. So still trying to notch that first win here in the X League. Closing up behind Violet now as they come to the run to the final chicane. Not going to go for a big move this time, but he is trying to set up to have a cleaner run through the chicane. Right on the rear wing of Violet as they come down to complete the first lap here. Pedro seems to back off just a little bit. Coming in at turn number 1, trying to make sure he doesn't hit Violet from behind and kill some of his momentum in the process. Keflex has already caught Savage in a fight for 3rd now. Our top 2 have already put 2 seconds on the rest of the field in just a single lap. Downhill, it looks like Violet might be a bit stronger in a straight line, and Pedro a little bit better in the corners and initial acceleration, but now they're onto the Camel Straight, the longest straightaway on the circuit. Pedro using the draft, closing the gap down on Violet. It was up to 35 hundredths, now it's down to just 2/10 at the end of the straight. But that's not enough for Pedro to really have a shot at making a move on Violet. Again, close enough to put pressure on him. Not really in a position to make any overtakes, though. One other thing to remember is that, yes, there was a pace lap for lap 1, but with how long of a circuit this is, a pace lap here is still going to put a lot of wear on your tires. So it's not like you can look at this as a normal 22 plus 1 lap race. This is closer to a 23 lap race when it comes to terms of tire wear. But again, if you can make a set of soft tires last about 8 laps, you can make an easy 2 stops. If you can make a medium set last 8 laps, you can make it 2 stop. I think this is a very easy 2-stop affair tonight. Holminder has slipped to last. He's already more than 8.5 seconds off of our leader's pace right now. Back into Sector 3 they go. Pedro seems to have good handling, is able to stay right behind Violet through Sector 2 with no issue. But the counterpoint is that it seems like the draft in that car is not strong enough to let him even try to do anything to Violet on the straightaways. He's able to tuck up behind the rear wing, but not able to go for any big lunges or big dives. He'll go, try to lunge deep into the final chicane, but can't really make it stick. Better exit out of chicane, though. Violet's still struggling to get the tires up to speed. Pedro right behind him. Now through the turn 1 hairpin. Violet wide. Pedro has a little bit tighter and cleaner line out of turn 1. And he'll still be right behind Violet now as they go downhill. Big twitch by Violet. That's another big twitch by Violet. It's a 3rd big twitch by Violet. And that's Pedro, who swerves out of the way. He's going to pull up alongside Violet now. And now the 2 of them are in a drag race at the top spot. Savage is 4 seconds out. He will not have an impact on this. This is all for the marbles. Pedro has his car about 2/3 of the way ahead, but drops the tire into the grass. Just as he brakes, he's still holding it around the outside. Can he make it stick? He does! Pedro goes to the lead. Violet's going to look to try and cross him over. He's got him. He's got to his inside. Side by side as they start running downhill, and Violet's the one on that preferred inside line. Pedro's got to try and keep him pinched down, try to kill his exit momentum. Can't make it stick. Violet back to the point. And already Savage over 4 seconds out from our top two. So this is just going to be these two fighting for this win for the rest of the night. Pedro is the one who now gets to the inside of Violet, slides the car just a bit, pushes Violet a little bit wide, tries to give him room on the exit, but now Violet slides wide on his own and he'll go back to the point. So it is Violet, Pedro, Savage, Keflex, Temper Chip, and Hominder. Let's look at the tire wear right now. 35% wear already for Violet. For Pedro, it is 35% as well. We look at Savage way back here in third position. 35%. And he's got engine damage that's not going to help him. Keflex 500 MG behind him is at 36%. Tempered Chip running in fifth. He is at 24%. So Tempered Chip likely running a medium tire compound. And then this is Homelander here at last, 23%. So it looks like Homelander and Tempered Chip running a harder compound tire right now. Fight for a lead. Back into the final chicane once more. This time Pedro shoots it up the inside, but really gets the car sideways going over one of the curbs. Gets right into the rear bumper of the 120, and they're going to be in a drag race as they come down to the start-finish straight this time by. They waited a few laps to make sure they cleared the rest of the field, but now that they've cleared the rest of the field, they are getting at it against each other now. After 4 full racing laps, neither of them really have an outright advantage over the other. I think Violet might barely have the advantage over Pedro, but is not an outright advantage. I think he's just a little bit happier, a little bit more confident with how the car feels right now. But Pedro pulls up right behind Violet again, and there you can see both Violet and Pedro having to slide through Al Rouge and up through Radion. Now onto the Camel Straight once again. Keflex has caught Savage farther back, but our focus is on the lead. Is Pedro going to try a big, deep lunge at the end of the Camel Straight? Nothing of the sort this time by. But he really closes in under braking, though. Violet drops the tire into the dirt, puts up a little cloud of smoke there. Pedro kind of straight lines the entrance into that hairpin. It was kind of a rounded hairpin. Through the no-name corner. And now back downhill. Pedro putting those right side tires on that painted green strip. He's trying to widen his entry into these double left-handers without losing too much speed or grip in the process. Now they are more than 6 seconds out and ahead of Savage. Again, one interesting thing to remember, Tempered Chip, he's been losing about 2 seconds a lap, if not more, despite being on a harder compound tire. But depending on how far he can take that rubber, may depend if he can make this a one-stop affair while these guys make it a two-stop. That could get him a ridiculously good result. All right, Pedro pulls up behind Violet. Does he go for the inside lunge again? He does. Deep lunge into the inside, but then backs out of it coming into the chicane. Now tries to set up for a good exit. Gets right up behind Violet again. They're going to be just about nose to tail as they come across the start-finish line this time by. Starting the 5th racing lap now. Violet braking a little earlier than Pedro through there. This time Pedro is the one who runs a little wider than Violet. Back downhill, the duo goes once again. Big twitch and slide, and that's Violet around! Violet with a huge impact on the wall at top of Al Rouge and Radion. The car is absolutely destroyed. The engine is still functioning, but everything else on the car is ruined. And everyone else trundles on by. But catastrophic impact for Violet. And suddenly, Manuel Pedro goes into the lead by a massive margin over the rest of the field. Now, his tires are already at 51% wear. But now he doesn't really have to push aggressively to save tire life. He'll be fine for a while. Savage, Keflex, Tempered Chip all get by Violet. So this now moves Savage up into the 2nd position. The Savage and Keflex are both about 7.5 seconds out from Pedro at the moment. And they also, we believe, are on the softer compound tires. So it's likely we're going to see our entire top 3 pit either at the end of this lap or next lap, so they've not gone quite as far as I imagined they wanted to. It might be a 3-stop run for our lead group on the softer compound tires, and for those on the mediums, it could only be a 2-stop maybe. Big slide wide for Savage though, and that brings Keflex right into play, and Pedro is hemorrhaging time now. Suddenly Savage and Keflex are really starting to close down on Pedro. Holminder has now cleared Violet. Here comes Keflex around the outside, which will give him the inside line. Coming to the corner, he's got him. Keflex by Savage. Smooth overtake there. And this duo is gradually chipping away at Pedro's advantage over them. Pedro's only gone 5 laps on these tires. And our pace car is rolling. I believe, yeah, and Pedro is pitted, but our pace car is rolling. So yes, we are under caution for the accident that Violet had, and Savage is going to stay out another lap. He's got 10% in the fuel tank, and under pace speed, you don't really burn up a lot of fuel, and there's not really a big advantage in pushing track position right now. This is probably a good strategy call by Savage. But Pedro pits, Tempered Ship pits, Keflex pits. Holminder is going to stay out. I imagine Holminder is already kind of locked in on running medium tires. So Pedro, after he comes out of pit lane, is going to end up just ahead of Holminder. So Pedro is still going to be second after this round of pit stops here. Then it will be Holminder third, Tempered Ship fourth, Keflex fifth, and Indial Violet will be buried in sixth. He will have fresh tires, but he is going to have the humiliation of knowing that he crashed and brought out that first yellow. So while we are under yellow flag, we're going to go ahead and take a Twitch-mandated ad break. We'll be back momentarily here at Spa-Francorchamps. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Spa-Francorchamps. We are under yellow after Violet crashed out of the lead going through the Alrouge and Radion complex, so he has just recaught the rear of the grid. So the question is now is going to be, are we going to spend another lap under yellow, or are we going to go green right away? If we spend another lap under yellow, that would be a big help for Savage, who elected to pit, who elected not to pit as the yellow came out, which has given him the lead now over Manuel Pedro. Holminder has moved up to third. He also is not pitted, but that is because he started this race on the medium compound tires. Him and Savage are the only drivers who have not yet pitted. And Savage is pitting this time by, and he's going to be joined by Pedro. In fact, the entire field, except for Keflex, pits this time by, so Keflex now goes into the lead. Now for Savage, good news with bad news. The good news, one fewer pit stop. The bad news, this stop's going to be longer, and the drivers behind him are going to be making a comparatively shorter pit stop. So they're likely going to jump him on the run out of pit lane here. So I imagine Pedro, at the very minimum, is going to end up ahead of Savage. If not the entire field. That is exactly the case. The entire field is now going to be ahead of Savage. Again, that strategy call of Savage's would have been good in any other series, but in this series, there's not really any way to preserve an advantage from pitting later. If everyone else just wants to pit at the same time as you, they can jump you in the pit road and have the exact same advantage that you were pushing. The only driver this kind of hurts, I would argue, is Keflex. He's now going to be on older tires with a little bit less fuel than everyone else, but even then, it's not going to be a massive offset. Only by about a lap, if not a little less. So interesting enough, this means that Holminder has now pitted, Temper Chip has now pitted, so everyone in the field has now pitted at least once already before we even get to the 10th lap of the event. Keflex is going to be your leader, but it will be Manuel Pedro who will be second. Violet actually ended up leapfrogging both Savage and Holminder in that. So Violet doesn't have to work too hard to get back to where he was before. We should be able to go green this time by. So if the soft tires can last 6 laps and maybe 7 laps, that suggests that the medium tires could last about 9 laps. Not quite 10, but probably 9 laps. So right now, when we go green, we're going to have 15 laps to go. You run a stint on the mediums and then a stint on the softs, you could make it to the end on just one more stop, potentially. If you're on the softs now, run those softs till they're cooked, and throw on the mediums. And if you're on the mediums, run those until they're cooked, and then throw on the sauce. That is under the impression that we go green for the rest of this race. You would think with how small the field is, going green flag to flag would be a guarantee, but as you can see, we've already had 1 yellow flag today. So things can change. Pace car is not pulled out yet, and there it is, a very late pull out. The pace car finally pulls off there, and we're coming back to the green flag here. How long can Keflex hold the lead over Manuel Pedro? That is the question. That is a jump and a half. That was a gigantic jump. It looks like Keflex backs out of it, realizes that's no bueno. I imagine Pedro's really going to just blitz by him now. Frustration out of that. Violet back there in 4th. That'll be the other one to really keep an eye on. Tipper Ship not too far behind Pedro, but he's not really shown the speed that Pedro has had. And already Pedro pulls up alongside Keflex out of Radion. Side by side for a lead down the Camel Straight, but Pedro has the momentum and the inside line. Temper Chip pulls up. He's got to run. Now Violet has a run. Violet thinks about making it 3 wide. He'll back out of it. He's not in a rush. He'll wait a bit to make these moves. But Pedro to the lead in just a single sector. Temper Chip trying to make something happen as Keflex has already fallen back behind Violet. Temper Chip looks to the inside. Pedro pushes Pedro a bit wide there. Backs up the entire top 4. But now Pedro starts firing out of there like he's out of a cannon. And now it's Violet trying to make moves. Violet pulls up behind Tempered Chip. The thing is, for Violet, the longer he spends fighting with Tempered Chip, the less time he'll have to run down Pedro. And again, we don't really know what the tire strat for the rest of the field is right now. We think a medium soft or a soft medium run to the end is the way to go. We're not really going to have an idea who is on what tires until we're another lap or two into this run. Bottom of the circuit now in Sector 3. Violet right behind Tempered Chip. Chip's going to go and take the right-hand side. Violet's going to get to the left-hand side, so it should be an easy overtake for Violet as long as Tempered Chip doesn't try to pinch him down. And yeah, that move is already done. So Violet back to second. That accident, pretty much a non-issue for him. Now the question is, can he run down and catch Pedro's draft and start fighting with him for the lead again? Savage has already gotten by Catflex. Holmender has slipped back to 6. He's already lost 4.5 seconds in a single lap. 5 seconds, actually, in a single lap. 8 seconds in a single lap. Is there something wrong with Holmender, or is he just on, like, an incredibly hard compound tire? He's got engine damage. That's not going to help. All right, for the lead. Pedro has it. Violet wants it back. Already they've pulled away from the rest of the field. Violet closes in on Pedro out of Radion. Down the back straightaway. Violet gets to the inside of Pedro. This should be an easy overtake. He has the ideal line of choice. Is already way deeper into the corner. Pedro not really even in a position to cross him over. So Violet is faster, but seems to be a little bit more accident prone than Pedro is right now. Last time he wrecked when his tires got to about the 50% wear mark. That will be the thing. Can he keep the car under him when the tires get to roughly that same point of wear again later in this run? Boy, Violet already pulling about 8/10 on Pedro. Draft does help Pedro close that back down a bit. Okay, what credit due? Tempered Chip is on the tail end of this. So if this rest of this race is decided by pace alone, Chip might be able to pull a podium result out of this. All right, bottom of the circuit now. And into Sector 3, Pedro should be just close enough to have the draft on Violet. Not really going to be in position to make an overtake, but he'll have the draft on him. Should be able to use that to maybe set himself up for a run down the Camel Straight on this following lap. Again, close enough to get the draft. Able to close in a bit in a straight line. And he has been a little bit better than Violet in this final chicane here as well. Now it's just a bit over half a second between the two as they cross the start-finish line. Less than half a second through turn 1. So Violet trying to break the draft on Pedro now. Both of them on relatively fresh tires. And now they have left Tempered Chip behind as well. Alright, half a second. And Pedro is rapidly cutting that gap down. Now less than 4/10. Now it's just a third of a second. Now a quarter of a second. Does he try to make a lunge at the end of the Camel Straight? He will not. He thinks better of it. But he got it to less than a fifth of a second before the breaking point. Holmender already 13.8 seconds out of the lead. At that rate, if he has to make an emergency stop for something, he may be at risk of going a lap down tonight. The rest of the field is completely spread out. Let's go ahead and look at tires and compare tire wear right now. Violet, 33.7% already. Manuel Pedro, he is at 34% already. Tempered Ship in third position. He is at 34.6%. Savage in fourth is at 22.6. So Savage is on a medium compound tire by the looks of it. Catflex in fifth here, 20%. And then Holmender, who is running dead last, he is at 22%. So it does look like our fourth, fifth, and sixth place drivers are running the harder compound tire. Violet, Pedro, Ship are running a softer compound tire right now. And I'm anticipating these guys will have to pit around lap 14 or 15 at the rate that it's going here. Pedro pulls up behind Violet. Does he make the lunge into the chicane? No, he's going to actually brake early so he doesn't get into Violet through here. Two of them take a slightly alternate run through that final chicane, and I do feel that Pedro has Violet's advantage through there, but Violet is about equal to Pedro around most of the corners, but I think Violet's setup is a little bit better in a straight line. And I think that's where he's making up more time relative to Pedro. Pedro's able to slightly counter that with the draft, but it's not enough for him to consistently get up alongside Violet to make a move. Through Alrouge and Radion again, and that's another big slide by Violet. Violet slides! Pedro has to get hard on the brakes to avoid it. Violet has had his second self-inflicted instant. This time, though, he does not go into the wall, but that also means there's not going to be a yellow flag for him to try and run Pedro back down. And Pedro goes into a big lead. Violet now is going to have to try and keep his advantage over Tempered Ship, and Violet will have already burnt up more of the life of those tires than he would have wanted. So for the second time, Violet, big slide at the top of Alrouge and Radion. And we've seen in many different series that have run here at Spa, the NDL team cars frequently have big issues and lose huge amounts of time or have outright accidents and spins in that corner complex. Violet just seems to add his name to that list. So now he has to try and start closing that gap on Pedro back down again. And real quickly, just for comparisons, look at the tire life. 46.7% for Violet there. Pedro, 46.9%. So Violet's doing slightly better on tire life management at the moment. They're going to want to pit sooner rather than later here, I'd imagine, because their tires are going to be cooking here. All right, we're going to spin a lap on board with NDL Violet as he tries to run back down on Manuel Pedro here at Spa. As the tires go away, we'll be back momentarily at Spa-Francorchamps. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Spa-Francorchamps with 10 laps to go as the leaders cross the line. And that leader is now going to be Savage, 6647. Our top three, Pedro, Violet, and Tempered Chip, all pitted this time by, but these drivers are staying out. They are on the harder compound tire, technically a medium compound tire, we believe. While the three that just pitted, they are going to have to put on the mediums to make it to the end with no more stops. While the drivers who are out leading now, they can run these mediums until they're cooked, and then afterwards throw on the softs late. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out, and that is Violet taking a very chaotic line through there. Violet seems to be having a little trouble getting those tires up to temperature, it seems. Trying to stay ahead of Homelander right now. It looks like Homelander's actually going to get by Violet here. Yeah, that overtake is completed. So Violet slips back to 5th. The lowest position he's been at since his accident that brought out our yellow earlier. Savage leads, though, and now Violet gets right back by Homelander as Homelander botches a corner. Savage is leading on this alternate strategy. His tires are at 42% right now. We anticipate he'll have to pit around lap 17. Manuel Pedro is going to have to get by Keflex before he even gets back to the lead. Now, Keflex, he is at 35% tires, so he's at 35, and Savage is at 43. I wonder if Keflex is running the hard compound tire, hoping to just not make a stop to the end of this race, and pulling out a result off the back of that. Thing is, that strategy might sound nice and good, but Pedro is catching Keflex with speed right now, and the moment Pedro gets by Keflex, that shot at the win immediately evaporates. Although it could be a difference because, if I remember correctly, Keflex did pit with everyone else. Savage did not. No, Savage did pit with everyone else. Keflex was the one who didn't pit with everyone else. So Keflex may have locked into this hard tire strap very early on here, trying to make something wild happen. But with the speed that Manuel Pedro is showing behind, I don't think he's going to be able to pull this off. I think Pedro is going fast enough that as long as he doesn't wreck the car like we saw Violet do, he is going to catch Keflex likely within the next lap or two. Possibly by the end of this very lap. Chip now gets by Homelander back there for 5th position. Bit of a slide there for Keflex as he goes into the Al Rouge and Radion complex. And therein lies the problem with the hard tires. Sure, they definitely hurt you a bit when it comes to lap time, but the big thing is it's the handling. You lose so much handling, and we've seen drivers before, they get onto tires that are not softs and they just immediately lose all capability and all pace. You need to have flexibility and adaptability on all compound of tires. And if Keflex is struggling this much with this harder rubber, Manuel Pedro is going to eat him alive in just a few laps here. Savage is leading on this alternate strategy. One thing I do have to wonder, though, when Savage does finally make his stop, will he be able to nurse his tires, whatever he gets onto, will he be able to nurse those tires to the end or not? 6 laps seems to be about that happy point for those softs that are completely died. No one seems to be willing to push it 7 laps. Be right on board with Pedro now as he's closing in on Keflex to steal the second position. Again, we know he's going to get it and blow by with no issue. Pedro knows that Violet is 4th place behind him, but he has a pretty good gap on Violet after Violet's self-inflicted spin going uphill in Al Rouge and Radion. Again, Pedro looking for his first win in X League. Small field, this probably wouldn't be the kind of field he'd want to make it happen in. As they say, sometimes a win is a win. Closing in, getting a draft, gets right behind Keflex, ends up hitting him. I don't think he realized how much the speed differential was between the two of them. Here goes your leader, Savage, and here comes this fight for second. Should be an easy dive bomb here by Pedro, and Hominder pits this time by. There you go. Manuel Pedro easily takes second position over Keflex now. Violet starting to close in as well now. And that's 5th place Tempered Chef going by. The draft is still working in Keflex's favor for now, but he's going to lose that by the time they come out of Sector 2. And then he'll just be a sit and duck for Violet to deal with. Goodness, Keflex really having the big slide through there. All right. When the leaders hit the line, it'll be 7 laps to go. Can Savage stay on these tires until it's 6 to go? That is the big question. He is already at just about 56% tire wear. And what the other thing that's hurting him is that apparently he is slowly accumulating engine damage as well. Now, Keflex can stay out another lap longer than Savage, so while he has a track position disadvantage, he may be able to turn this into a tire advantage on the run to the end here. But he's about to be caught by Violet now, and Violet's going to dispose of him very quickly. Man, already Keflex has lost 2.5 seconds to Pedro in just a single sector of the circuit. And Hominder's nowhere near the rest of this field. But unless Pedro makes a catastrophic mistake somewhere, it's all but guaranteed he's going to win this. Violet's been fast, but he has not been fast enough to run Pedro down by the looks of it. Where he catches and overtakes Keflex is going to have an impact, and Savage has chosen to stay out a bit longer. So he's already at 59% tire wear. He's probably going to be in the 60% range of the tire wear by the end of this lap. So he is going to be hemorrhaging time. But if he can maintain his advantage on track over Keflex to the checkers, that could still be big, but he has to maintain this advantage right now. And already, Pedro's probably only about 3 seconds out, but that is a huge slide by Pedro back there. But you can't say Pedro isn't trying. Mind you, he's at 32% already as well. Savage continues to run in the lead. Actually pulled a little bit of gap back on Pedro. Keflex 3 seconds out from Pedro, and Pedro's only about 1.5 seconds behind Savage right now, if not less. And Violet's just about caught. No, Violet has caught Keflex now. This, in theory, should be an easy overtake for Violet. The problem is, if he's catching him here in Sector 2, he's going to lose time going side by side with him in a corner. Ideally, you want to make this a nice, easy overtake in a straight line. But one big benefit that Violet might get is that Violet may only have to deal with this one car. Savage, by the looks of it, is going to hold up Pedro for a little bit here. Look at this fight at the front real quick. And already, Keflex wide, and Violet's going to go right by him. Yeah, here we are at the front. So it looks like Pedro's going to catch Savage in a straight line. I imagine he'll try to outbrake him going into the final chicane. But you look at Savage, you look at his tire wear, 64% wear, but he's made it stick. He still has maintained most of his advantage over Keflex. So in the fight between Savage and Keflex, I think the advantage is going to go back into Savage's favor. He was able to survive the worn out tires. They can pit, throw on softs to the end here. So Pedro goes back to the lead, pretty much uncontested. And Keflex chooses not to pit. He's going to wait one extra lap before making a stop. So another interesting decision there. He is at 52% wear with only 4% left in the fuel tank. Is Keflex going to have the fuel to make it back around? Keflex runs about 6 seconds behind Pedro right now, and another big slidey moment there from Violet going up through Eau Rouge and Radion. And Keflex didn't just have a slidey moment. It looks like he's had a full-on spin, so any shot that Keflex had at catching Savage, that's going to be over now as Keflex has had his own self-inflicted spin going up through Eau Rouge and Radion. Tempered Chip runs in 4th position now. I don't think he has the tire life or the fuel to make it to the end, and even if he did, Savage is likely going to catch him. Savage is going to be on nice, sticky, soft tires to the end here. So I think you can reasonably say this race, this fight for basically every position is going to be over. Savage is going to catch Tempered Chip, get by him. Keflex still has to pit again, so Savage basically guaranteed a 3rd place result tonight. Violet 2nd. Pedro is on track for finally bringing home his first win in the X League tonight. Less than 2%, close to about 1.5% left for Keflex. He's not yet to the final straightaway. Again, there is a question, will he have the fuel to make it back into the pit road or not? Matt Pedro's pitting. Your leader, Manuel Pedro, has suddenly elected to pit very late in the event. Oh, he could not make the tires last, so it looks like he's gone back-to-back rounds on the soft compound tire. Violet says, no, I'm not worried about that. So Violet keeps trundling on what we believe are mediums. So strategy malfunctions may have just taken a win away from Pedro. That's not to say Violet's going to walk off by default. He does have to keep the car under him. But he's going to have a massive advantage here with 5 laps left. Keflex has jumped into the pits with Pedro here. And Savage is going to end up ahead of one, if not both of them. Yeah, he's going to end up ahead of Keflex, but Pedro's far enough up the road that Savage is not going to catch Pedro. The interesting thing now, Pedro's going to have the pace advantage on Violet, but that is a 17-plus second gap between the two of them. Pedro has to get his tires warm up here through Eau Rouge and Radion. Cold tires through there are always difficult. And these tires are going to stay cold basically until you get to that, to the switchback here. The braking zone at the end of the Camel Straight, the tires are still going to be cold. This will be a very aggressive braking zone. Your tires will get back up to temperature and pretty much stay hovering around the operating temperature afterwards. But you spend a long time on cold tires when you get out of the pits here at Spa. 17.3 seconds is the gap on circuit now between Violet and Pedro. It looked like Pedro had this race in the bag, but he has chosen to make an extra pit stop, wants to spend as much time as possible on the soft compound tires. Violet, on the other hoof, willing to run less time in pit lane and will also trade in some on-track pace for it, but he has over a quarter of a minute advantage over Pedro. It's not like Tempered Chip in second really has the speed to do anything to Violet either. Keflex and Homelander have their own little shenanigans here. Homelander is at 35% wear. We believe he is on the medium compound tire, just trying to limp those home. But I don't think he's really going to have anything for Keflex to the end here. Well, Pedro's already cut that gap down to less than 16.5 seconds. He is queuing that lead away, and Violet's only going to continue to get slower and slower. Pedro's not really going to lose time. So as we are closing down to the last few laps, let's go ahead and take a quick mandated ad break. We're going to ride on board with Manuel Pedro near the end of this race, see what our pole sitter can do on fast, sticky tires at Spa. We'll be back shortly. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Spa. We spent a lap on board with Manuel Pedro. We have 3 laps left in the event. Pedro is queuing up the gap to Violet, but the problem is he basically has to close down at a rate of over 4 seconds a lap on Violet in order to make this win happen. Pedro is going to be bridesmaid once again by the looks of it. Has a bit of a slide there going up through Al Rouge and Radion. And even if he caught Violet, time penalties are more in Violet's favor than they are in Pedro's. So once again, Pedro going to be denied a win, and Violet will be on his 3rd different win of the season here in the X League Porsche Cup season. Tempered Chip looks like he's going to be able to hold on for 3rd, but I highly doubt he'll be able to keep Manuel Pedro behind him to the end of this race here. Savage will come home in 4th, Keflex 5th, and Homelander will be a very distant 6th. But it does look like Homelander has kept it together well enough. He'll still easily finish this race on the lead lap. Right now, this little fight for 2nd is likely going to be the last fight of the day, barring some sort of catastrophic failure for Violet. And to be fair, Violet's already had 1 accident in Al Rouge and Radion, and then a big slide of his own as well. There you are. Pedro completes the overtake on Tempered Chip in that double downhill left-hander. It is 13 1/3 seconds between 1st and 2nd now. We know that Pedro can continue to close that gap down, but he's going to have to be closing at the rate of about 7 seconds a lap. That kind of closing basically would be the equivalent of Violet needing to lift and coast at the end of all the straightaways to save fuel, and I don't think that's going to happen. Again, Violet's on medium tires. They already have some wear on them. 51%. So it's not like he's going to be going faster. His time is going to continue to slow down. That is a lot of time he can afford to burn. Over 12 seconds worth of time he has over Pedro. And Pedro would have to close by about 6.5 seconds in this lap and the next lap in order to make something happen for this win. And that's just catching Violet. He has to still finish well ahead of him to be clear of the time penalties that have been accrued. But Violet hasn't exactly been perfect by any means, and issues like that obviously don't help there. Yeah, now Violet is up to 2.9 seconds, but Pedro is up to 2.9 seconds as well. So now this duo is even on time penalties. And Pedro, less than 12 seconds out, but again, he'd have to close 6 seconds this lap, 6 seconds the next lap. I just don't see that happening. Pedro's good. I don't know if anyone is that good, though. All right, the gap's already down to 10.6 seconds. Now 10.5. Less than 10.4. Every time it updates, we're seeing the time bleed away, but it's just not going to be enough. Violet in that 120 machine missed out on pole again, but is still on track to take this win. He just needs to not stuff it. The gap's now less than 10 seconds. Interesting enough, Violet is actually still pulling on Tempered Ship at this point in the event. Yeah, Violet is doing a good job managing his gap, and Pedro is on a run of his own, likely going to take fastest lap. Coming out of the final chicane, though. White flag is in the air. As Violet crosses the start-finish line, 1 lap left. He has 9.5 seconds over Pedro. Again, as long as he doesn't spin or put the car into a tire barrier, Violet has this race won. 9.3 seconds is the gap. But Pedro desperately needs something bad to happen to Violet here. Up through Al Rouge and Radion again. Another bit of a drift, not really a big slide, just kind of a drift through there. And Pedro on the softer tires is going to take out another big chunk of time through there, and then down the Camel Straight. It's still going to be over 7.5 seconds just at the end of Sector 1 between the two of them. And Violet should have the fuel to the end. Yeah, Violet's not going to worry about fuel to the end here. Everyone else spread out. We're not really going to have any other fights for position to the end of this run here tonight. Now it's less than 7 seconds. Again, Pedro desperately needs something to happen to Violet. Needs him to go off. Needs him to end up in the dirt. Needs him to miss a braking zone. Something bad. It just does not look like it's going to happen. There's really only one real braking zone left for Violet. In Pedro's credit, he has gotten that gap down to less than 6 seconds. Might be less than 5 seconds when they cross the line to end the race. Violet fought with Pedro for a lead early on, had a crash, brought out the yellow, rebounded up to the top 2 spots, then had a big prolonged spin. Looked like the race was over, But Pedro threw away what should have been an easy win by making a suboptimal strategy call. And to the checkered flag, NDL Violet takes the victory, his third victory of the Porsche Cup season. Pedro will come home in second. And it looks like it's going to be a fight between Tempered Chip and Savage for third here. Chip's burnt out his tires, and Savage has got him. This might be decided by time penalties, ladies and gentlemen. Cross the line. And it is Savage. Savage, with fewer time penalties, will steal the podium over Tempered Chip. Catflex will come home fifth, and Homelander will be sixth. All right, Violet, can you hear me? All right, can you go ahead and include your audio? Yeah, I'm assuming it's probably fine because your audio is probably automatically being included because you're doing your own stream as well. That would be my guess, at least. All right, yeah. Savage, can you hear me? Go ahead and include your audio real quick. All right, Savage, we'll start off talking with you. Interesting race, missed qualifying, kind of all up and down the field. Led for a little bit, at the back for a little bit, come home with a podium. What do you have to say about your run tonight? All right. Are we going to see you in tomorrow night's GT3 Pro race by any chance? All right. We'll be interested to see what turns out there. Savage, thanks for jumping in and talking with us. All right. We're going to go ahead and turn our focus to our second place finisher, Manuel Pedro. Pedro, Portuguese, okay. Great race. What do you have to say? Pedro, will you be with us tomorrow for the GT3 race? All right, goodbye then. Thank you. All right, well, that is a few brief words from our second place finisher, Manuel Pedro. So now we turn our focus to our race winner, NDL Violet. Violet, you missed out on pole, but you had the fastest in-race lap and pulled off the victory with just being a little bit smarter on strategy calls. What do you have to say about your run out there? Because things got pretty dark for you there at one point today. All right, Violet, it's been your third win this season in the Porsche Cup events. What do you think is bringing you so much extra success in these events compared to your results in the GT3 Pro? All right, fair enough. One last question before you go. I've been covering Forza Motorsport stuff since, Forza Motorsport 7. Why does it seem like it's always the NDL team drivers who are always having an instance in Alrouge and Radeon? I'm not saying no one else has it, but I swear like 33% of all the instances I've seen in the last 3 years I've covered this game are always NDL drivers. Why does it seem to be the case? Let's hope it doesn't happen tomorrow. Violet, thanks for jumping in and talking with us. Good job on the rebound to a victory here at Spa. And ladies and gentlemen, don't you worry. We will be back tomorrow night for hopefully a larger field as we descend on Spa-Francorchamps with the proper full GT3 Pro grid. But until next time, I've been your host for today's broadcast, Insanely 13. Thank you everyone for joining us. Farewell and goodbye, everyone.